Let's draw this anime girl step by step together. This will be done in a digital art program called Clip Studio Paint, but feel free to follow along in another program or with pencil and paper. Let's do it. This is what we're going to draw as a very first step, is this kind of base head. I'm going to make it downloadable for you in case you'd rather kind of just use this as a base instead of drawing from scratch. But if you don't want to use the base, then of course I'll walk you through how to do this. I'm set up here and ready to draw. To begin, we're going to want to draw a circle. Bet you saw that coming. And I always go around a few times to make it smooth, kind of instead of going around one time, going around a couple times just gives you the chance to kind of find that circle. We're going to have her looking almost directly at the camera. So that means we're going to draw a line down the middle of our circle. But in this case, she will be tilting her head slightly. So I'm gonna start my line slightly over here and end it roughly over here. Just kind of on an angle. That might even be too much. Let's try that. Let's find ourselves the middle and draw a somewhat curved line through the middle. You could even draw a straight line, but I'm in the habit of thinking of this as a sphere, as a bit of a 3D shape, so curving it a little bit. And then we're gonna do the bottom half of this sphere shape in 2/3. So do a little tick of a line there and a tick of a line there. This will just help us position those facial features. And then we want to cut off the sides of the head. If you've ever seen a tutorial on how to do the Loomis method, this follows that logic. The head is not a big round circle, right? It's kind of narrow and more oval-like, so we'll just cut off the sides. And these lines at the side also give us a place for the jaw to begin. So we can add the jaw in now. We're gonna have the lines from our cutoff sides continue a little bit, sketch them in, continuing, and then rather quickly they're going to take a set and turn curve, and we're going to go probably another third of the way, like the third of this, the size of that, and do another third about there. And in anime, we like to make the chins rather pointy. In anime art, we'll also have relatively narrow looking necks and sometimes kind of elongated. So we might do a neck that's a bit longer and even narrower. From here, we're going to make a new layer, and we can turn down the opacity of our sketch so that we can sketch over top of it and make some more refined lines that will be our anime girl. I'm gonna go ahead and start sketching that chin area in. The chin area is one that I personally fuss with a little bit and is something that can really change the look of your character. So you may find yourself going back and fixing it, and you may find I do that too. I'm going to make a new layer to start sketching in one of the eyes, and I like to have a new layer for that in case I want to like move it around, but generally the top of the eye is going to touch the center line that we drew through our sphere. Do an arc shape, touching that line, and then arcing away. I'm going to do a little wing for the eye shape. And then the bottom's gonna mirror that shape. It gets thick in this area. We'll shade that in a second. And then this cuts in like this. Not really following that jawline that we kind of drew over here. It cuts in. And then we're gonna draw sort of a straightened bottom lash line here. And then it just kind of ends. Let's fill this in. Then I like to add an eyelid line that mirrors the lash line. And I might add some eyelash pieces coming off this eyelid here. And I might have some lower lash lines kind of down here. And then I'm gonna draw the iris. Now she's gonna be looking straight forward. So I'm gonna have this kind of go down, touch that bottom lash line, get kind of rounded there, merging a little bit with this bottom lash line and back up. We can draw that pupil in the middle, looking forward. I'm gonna leave the middle of this hollow, maybe give her a bit of an intense kind of look when she's staring. Now our eye's actually positioned in a bit of a funny spot. We might need to move it a bit. And I might even angle it just a little bit. I like to do the flip test to kind of get a feel for how it's looking. You might notice mistakes if you flip it, and it refreshes your perspective on what you're seeing. And that already looks a little better. And I'm gonna just shape in some general areas that we will have highlights and where we can shade around. I think of bean shapes. Let's add some bean shapes. And shade this in, and it goes darker to lighter. So it's going to be darker up top, and then it might get a little lighter. And I might add a little shading underneath right here and here. I like to use my transform tools a lot, so I'm looking at my piece and I'm like, can I make it better by transforming it? And I often will do that. So I'm thinking I might narrow it a bit, squish it a little horizontally. If you can see that before, after, and neither is more correct than the other. Bit of a personal preference. So I'm liking that a little bit more. And then the other thing you can kind of do in a digital art program that's pretty fun is finding the liquify tool. And for example, let's say the iris is looking a little too far to the right. I could just simply drag it all over. To do the other eye, we're just gonna make a duplicate of it and flip it. But the catch with doing this is the inside of the iris might not look quite right. So we're gonna have to angle this and everything and fix inside that iris. So in this case, I will select the inside and see if I can even just flip that. And then fix it based on having flipped it. And the reasons for this, as digital artists, we definitely have the option to use our tools, and these tools help us speed things up so we can do it for efficiency's sake. You are going to want to make sure those eyes are at the same sort of level, not really one higher than the other. And this may be something we have to come back and fix as we go, but we have these on separate layers, and I'm going to keep them that way so that I can make those changes as we go. The next thing we want to do is draw in a nose, something simple, and then a mouth. Could make her happy, something like that, or you could do something like little simple. And I tend to do it where it's just darker at the corners of the mouth, lighter, and then darker at the corner of the mouth again. I'm thinking I'll give her a bit of an intense look, like she's looking kind of intense at you. If you have ears showing, you might draw them in line with the tops of the eyes. So you'd have them begin at the tops of the eyes and go down, ending at about where the nose ends as well. So you could put them in. Now, I'm not really intending for her to have ears, so I'm just gonna kind of fade them away. And since I drew them, I'll just leave them kind of in the faded background. Maybe I'll change my mind and need them so they are there on their own layer. I'm gonna add eyebrows in while I'm thinking about it. And in true anime fashion, we'll just have a simple line of some sort, like so. And we'll try and mirror them, make them the same. We'll try and make sure they're about the same height and roughly the same shape. Commonly, we've seen in anime are some slanted, like blush kind of lines. I kind of think they're cute and give a little something to a sketch, so I draw them in. If you want her blushing, you could do a few more across the bridge of the nose, but I'll just stick with the ones under the eye area. And I might shade under the neck just a little bit, imply some shading here. It would be nice at this point to add some hair. I'm gonna turn down our sketch just a little bit more, those like sketch lines that we have, so I can see a little more clearly. I like starting with the bangs. And this middle upper part of the sphere, we might draw bangs that round towards the middle and end. And I like to think of hair in sections when I draw. So this might be a section of hair with some strands. And we'll have our hair kind of stemming from a middle point. Top of the head might be about there. So all the hairlines can kind of point back towards this like middle dot at the top. And then we'll just have some more somewhat random, but not entirely random hair strands. And hair gives a lot of opportunity to be creative and is a little bit forgiving in how you do it. And then I'm going to work on another section of hair here, maybe touching that part of the eye, just barely touching it. And do something similar on the other side. Now, anime hair tends to be big, so I'm thinking it's always a good idea to go past the original circle that we drew, because all the volume in the hair is going to make it so that the hair isn't like tight to the scalp. There's going to be a lot of room here, so I've left room in that area to have the hair have lots of volume, because anime hair is dramatic. Anime hair has lots of size and length and stuff like that, right? So volume in the hair. And I'm gonna frame the face with some hair pieces. Some hair sections. Thinking of our hair in sections is a good idea. And it's nice to think about some empty space. So I did a strand connected to this strand, and we have this like empty space in here. That will literally be empty space where you could see through it. Maybe hair in behind it or something, but some empty space there. And a couple strands that frame the face, even coming onto the face just a little bit. And so we should probably do something similar on both sides. With a dead-on perspective like this of the face, we might have a reasonable amount of symmetry, so I'm taking that into consideration. What I do to one side, I might do something very similar on the other side. But hair is not exactly symmetrical, so maybe not trying to be exact. And I'll kind of imply some hairlines in behind. We'll see some of those hairs back here. In my mind, this is a character with long hair, so depending on how you draw the rest of her, but we want to maybe show some of that long hair. I'm gonna add this shape here at the top of the head, like an M shape a bit. We could have left it rounded, but I think I like the M shape for this. And again, we're having the hair sections kind of stem from this middle point. I'm gonna take a second to go in and draw some shoulders. And shoulders will come out a little wider than the head, just by a little bit. And depending on how we want our character to look, those shoulders could be broader or narrower. I'm gonna imply armpit there, and I'll do the same on the other side, just kind of eyeballing those in place. And this is just more or less a portrait of the head, so you can imagine the rest of this yourself, draw it in yourself how you want it to look. And these armpit lines relatively will end up in line with the head, so kind of approximately there and there. Back to the hair, I'm gonna add some more long hair strands coming out the sides. But anime hair is definitely best done in sections and strands, and thinking about the hair as a whole and giving it some movement and making it dynamic. Instead of all the hair just being straight, there's some like flowiness to it. That makes it more interesting and a bit even like magical, nice and appealing. I often do this too, like a fun little extra strand. You could always do the little strand at the top. And I'm gonna erase some of the overlapping so I know what hairs are on top of what, making those sections a little more defined, and erasing other areas of intersection like here and here. And I think now's a good time to get rid of those baselines that we had. And looking at it now, I can kind of see that the eyes do look a little wonky. One is probably higher than the other. So I'm gonna try and fix that. And just by eyeballing it is a good way to do this. Make sure the eyes aren't too close together. Make sure they're not too high on the face. Common rookie mistake is the eyes are like way up here. And I'm gonna merge everything together except the eyes, because again, eyes are something I just fuss with a lot, and I want the option to easily move them. And I want to add a little shadow to where the hair meets the skin on the forehead area. Some dimension in our sketch is kind of nice to have. This may be less important if you were intending to color and shade this in digital art wise, like after the fact. But for sketching, it's also just nice to have this in. And we can even intensify the main lines of our piece, those main edges of the most important shapes, like the jawline, even the neck, main hair sections. This is our chance to refine our sketch and go over the areas that we want to be there, make them more prominent. It's kind of a relaxing part of the art process, is kind of just going over things here, feeling out the project a little more. And I'll draw in the highlighted area of the hair. It's very common in anime to have hair highlights that go in a round shape around the head, like a halo kind of concept. And we'll do a flip test, see if there's anything we can fix. Just touching up this jawline, making it more symmetrical. It was looking a little narrow on the one side. And those kinds of things can be hard to fix and catch if you haven't had as much experience with drawing, but I can at least promise you that you will get better at catching those kinds of things with experience and doing these kinds of draw-alongs. The more practice, the better. Her stare is pretty intense. I wonder if I can soften it by increasing the size of the pupils. The bigger the pupils, the kind of like cuter she might look. And now's a good time to just play around with the sketch, try different things, move things around, experiment, and see if you can improve it. Do things like flip your art back and forth and zoom in and out to see how it looks. And see if your eyes can catch anything that you want to change to improve it. One last little bit of shading is I'm going to shade a little bit more in and around the upper part of the eyes. I think that just gives her a little bit more of a sweet look rather than staring so intensely at us. But if you want to keep the intense look, then don't shade this part in, I guess. And there you have it, our finished anime girl. If you got this far to the end of the tutorial, great job. And again, it's one of those things where don't be too hard on yourself if it doesn't look exactly like mine. Be kind to yourselves. I hope you had fun. And if you'd like to follow along in some more tutorials by me, then be sure to subscribe and leave a like. And any comments on your thoughts and video recommendations you may have. It'd also be super cool that if you do this tutorial and you post your work on Facebook to tag me. I will be sure to like it if I see it. Great job, everybody. Have a good one.